Welcome back to 6 and 6, where we cover 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. In a significant legal development, a judge in Brazil's top electoral court voted to acquit former President Jair Bolsonaro in a case concerning an alleged coup plot. The decision breaks from the court's majority perspective and hinges on insufficient evidence of direct intent to disrupt democratic processes. While Bolsonaro's comments about the electoral system were deemed inappropriate, they were not considered criminal enough to warrant conviction. From Reuters, quote, "The evidence presented does not support claims that Bolsonaro fully intended to disrupt the course of the electoral democracy in Brazil," said Judge Carlos Horbach, who argued that while Bolsonaro's electoral system comments were inappropriate, they did not rise to the level of criminality required for conviction, end quote. Next, we travel across the Atlantic to the South African nation, where Rand has weakened their currency against the dollar due to domestic economic challenges and anticipated global market volatility. Investors are closely monitoring upcoming economic data releases, including local retail sales, mining production, and the critical U.S. Consumer Price Index report. These data points could significantly influence monetary policy decisions by both the South African Reserve Bank and the Federal Reserve. From Reuters, quote, "In the meantime, the rand is expected to remain under pressure amid worries over domestic economic conditions, including power cuts and a volatile labor market. On the international front, expectations are high for the U.S. CPI data, as any indication of persistent inflation could sway the Fed's decision-making process," end quote. Next, we travel to North America, where Cuba has experienced a catastrophic nationwide blackout on September 9th, completely shutting down electricity across the entire island. The power outage, potentially triggered by sufficient technical failures in a national grid, has severely impacted the country already and their struggling economy as well. Cuban authorities are progressively working to restore electricity with a priority focus on critical infrastructure like hospitals and essential services. From Reuters, quote, "This massive power failure exposes the critical vulnerabilities in our national electrical infrastructure. While we are working diligently to restore power, it is clear that sufficient systematic improvements are necessary to prevent future widespread disruptions," end quote. Next, we travel to Taiwan, who is facing increasing security threats in its undersea communication cables from China's gray zone tactics, which could potentially disrupt critical telecommunication infrastructure. In response, Taiwanese authorities are intensifying patrols and coordinating closely with telecom operators to protect these vital communication lifelines. The government is particularly concerned about potential covert operations that might aim to damage or intercept these strategically important cables. From Reuters, quote, "The undersea cables connect Taiwan to the rest of the world and are the island's lifeline, carrying a majority of the telecommunications and internet traffic. These are not conventional acts of aggression, yet they hold the capability to disrupt and potentially isolate Taiwan." Next, we travel further south to Australia, who has approved the first vaccine to protect koalas from chlamydia, a disease that affects around half of the wild koala population. The vaccine, developed after years of research, will initially be implemented in a controlled environment with potential broader rollout to help stabilize koala populations. From Reuters, quote, "This vaccine is our hopeful solution to combat the spread of this devastating disease that has been ravaging koalas for far too long. Its usage can drastically reduce the number of suffering animals and offer a vital lifeline to the future generations of those beloved creatures," Professor Peter Timms at the University of Sunnyside Coast said, end quote. And lastly, we go to Europe, where Peter Mandelson has been dismissed from his role as British ambassador to the United States due to his connection with Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender. The dismal highlights growing public and advocacy group pressure for accountability in the diplomatic appointments. This development raises significant questions about background vetting processes and the ethical standards required for high-level diplomatic positions. From Reuters, quote, "The removal of Peter Mandelson signifies a significant movement in diplomatic and political spheres, reflecting a broader move towards accountability and transparency. Public trust is paramount, and any erosion, whether through actual or perceived affiliations, necessitates prompt and decisive action," which is a statement from the government. With that said, If you want to read any of today's articles in their entirety, you can find them linked in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes on these episodes on Tuesday and Thursday, and the normal podcast on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So, with all that said, there is only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die,